All right, we got USC week, Adam, and the Buffs are reeling, is maybe a nice way to say it. They've lost three in a row. A little bit of improvement offensively last week, but not nearly enough. But Buffs coming in here with USC, also reeling a little bit. Kind of an interesting matchup.
Yeah, there's no question about it. This is what USC's third time now going through a bulk of a season with an interim head coach. And I thought our USC publisher, Ryan Abraham, put it really well. He said, with the talent that USC has, they have the potential to come out and blow most teams aside from Oregon out in this conference. And that's true. They really do. Or they have the potential just to come out and lay an egg like they did against Stanford and they did last week against Oregon State. So trying to handicap this game is next to impossible. I will say it feels like matchup-wise, it kind of matches up kind of well for Colorado.
Yeah.
You look at USC's strength. Drake London leads the entire country in receiving yards. Well, Colorado's got two really good cornerbacks, and I was chatting with Mekhi Blackman the other day, and he said, Drake London tends to line up on the side where Christian Gonzalez is going to be lining up, and he said he's been lobbying, trying to get reps to go up against Drake London, which is a great attitude. You love to hear that from a cornerback, that he wants that challenge. So you like that part of it, and USC's defense has been giving up yards on the ground. Oregon State had a ton of rushing yards, and when we saw Colorado's offense finally click for a little bit of time there in Tempe, it was that 75-yard drive where I know it was considered a pass play to Ty Robinson, but that was in essence a running play if you look at it. So that's the one thing that can work for Colorado, I think, as they're trying to figure out the other parts of their offense with Brandon Lewis being so green. So we're not getting into predictions yet, but I kind of like a little bit of how this game could match up for Colorado.
Yeah, and really that drive you're referring to around that Robinson pass was also a couple nice runs by Jarek Broussard, a couple by Alex Fontenot. We saw Brendan Lewis break loose a little bit a few times that game. He had a 33-yard run. So I agree with you. I think that the matchup is not terrible. The one thing you wonder in this one is, does USC lay an egg 2 weeks in a row? They came out fired up that first game under their interim head coach and got a good win. Is at Washington State or against Washington State, but still, they came out fired up then. Do they do it 2 weeks in a row, lay an egg? And that's what I'm curious about on this one. I guess my point is you don't know which USC team is going to show up.
And back to my original point, if USC lives up to their talent, they're going to win this football game and probably handily. I don't think there's any way around that. They have not had the NFL draft picks that they had, in that Pete Carroll, but era. But you look at the recruiting classes they've been putting together, it's still, talent-wise, at least in terms of what these guys look like coming out of high school, it's still a top 10 program in terms of talent that they have. And so, that's the concern, right? Is that, they're frustrated after losing to Oregon State. And so you would doubt that that's going to happen again, but it's certainly possible. Again, that's a program that has an interim head coach right now, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, and you speak of the talent. Just look at quarterback, where you've got the reigning first team all conference quarterback from last year in Keaton Slovis, and his hold on the job is tenuous at best with Jackson Dart, the way he's coming out, and I know he was a little bit injured last week, so we don't even know which quarterback we'll see. They've got really good talent on both guys.
Apparently, Jackson Dart went in for meniscus surgery, and they're calling him week to week, but it doesn't sound like he's going to be available from this week. If it wasn't for that surgery, I think Jackson Dart would be the starting quarterback for USC this week. And I asked our USC guy about Keaton Slovis. It seems like he's regressed as a quarterback since he threw for 3,500 yards in 2019, and he said that's a fair statement. And they don't know why. I think he was dealing with some injuries last year and kind of changed his delivery a little bit last year, but that's not the issue this year. And now, I think a little bit late in that Oregon State game, he was pressing, trying to make a play. They were down. So that was why he threw a couple picks there. But, talent-wise, again, he's up there if he puts it together this Saturday.
Yeah. What's your read on the mood of the team this week? I know that we generally get a message that's positive, coming out of the Buffs. And we talked a little bit about it after the game. But Carl Durrell, again this week, we only talked to him once, but he again had that same positivity of like, hey, we're going to turn this around at some point. And it was almost that just stay with us, just be patient. And fans are so tired of hearing that. I know that they've heard it so many times before. my take, don't punish Carl Durrell because previous coaches have done the same thing, because every coach is going to have that same message. But I guess what's your take on the whole message coming out of CU this week?
Yeah, I have a hard time telling CU fans to be patient. I mean, your point is, we've talked about this before. It's not fair to Carl Durrell, but I'm not going to tell a CU fan to be patient anymore. I mean, they've been through enough. And the weird thing is, in season, I think it helps that there's 8 games left. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of football out there, and their goals are still there. And I asked Carl Durrell about the carrot you can dangle in front of these players that they have never beaten USC. And it's not a situation where they've been in the same conference for 50 years and they would have figured out a way along one of those years had that been the case.
Right.
So, but it's been enough times now to where it's like, when is it going to happen? Because it's going to happen at some point.
Right.
We even had the conversation about, could this be a brick game? And you had a good point that if they end up going 3-9 this year, then you look back, no, that's not a brick game. But there's still a lot for this team to, that's in front of them. But when you're in season like this, you really don't know the true mindset of these players until you find out later on. You go back to 2018 when they're 5-0 and they're up on Oregon State and things just fall apart. They're holding player-only meetings, and in those weeks we're doing these videos talking about, these players are still believing. And then you talk to guys that offseason, they go, yeah, we kind of threw in the towel because it was, a frustrating year for everybody, and it was really tough to keep the locker room together. It's one of those things you aren't going to hear about in season, right? That's something that you kind of find out later after the fact. But all indications are, yes, this team is still battling, and they still believe that they can have a successful season this year.
And I know people, some people look at it and say they're not going to win another game. They would laugh at the notion of this team even going to a bowl game at this point. But I think emotion is a funny thing, and momentum is a funny thing. That if the Buffs were able to rise up and win this game and beat USC for the first time ever, that could completely change the complexion of the season. If all of a sudden, in the players' minds, that gives them the jolt of confidence they need. Now all of a sudden, your next game is Arizona. You got Oregon State, you got Cal, you got some beatable teams coming up. That could change the season.
Could.
I'm being optimistic here.
Yeah, it just, when you look at this offense right now, the issues aren't one thing.
I know.
And so, in the locker room, they need to have that mindset, or they're defeated before they even step out on Folsom Field on Saturday.
Yeah.
But the offensive line's got to play better. Brendan Lewis has to learn how to read defenses, and I just don't know how that happens in 1 week. And the play calling has to get more creative. There's just so many things. And could that happen? And you use the momentum? Yeah, I mean, Akella Witherspoon's pick propels this team to a 10-win season. That's still a bowl team, even if they don't pick off that pass. But momentum is a huge thing when you're talking about 18 to 22-year-old players. But right now, gosh, it just, I don't see it.
Yeah.
Show me out there on the field.
We're at that point, and we're speculating about what happens if they win, but you are at that point. And we had a chance to talk to Darren Shiverini this week, and he said basically the same thing we've heard. It's like, hey, we're young. There's a lot of young guys out there. Brendan Lewis is going to get better. These guys are going to get better, and he's probably right. But again, that's where you're asking fans, be patient. These guys are going to get better. And that doesn't change the fact that you can't score right now, and that's what's going to make the rest of the season difficult is, they're going to get better, but how much better does Brendan Lewis, Jake Wiley, who's a freshman tackle, Ty Robinson, Chase Penry, how much better do these young guys get between now and the end of the season?
And along the lines of what I said about it not just being one issue offensively, there's also a difference. Let's say you're 7th or 8th in the Pac-12 in scoring offense right now. You're frustrated, but okay, you're not that far off. I mean, they are. You could make the argument the worst FBS offense. Without question the last 3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of ground to make up there. The word could they make up some of their ground? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But fans are going to get emotional and maybe go overboard in that sense. But there's a reason they're going to that level. It's because it's been really, really hard to watch this offense. And you see that 75-yard drive, and you go, that's the way. Not every possession, that's unrealistic. But just it's been bad the last 3 weeks.
This offense is sort of like my golf game. It's not very good, but then you have like a shot every now and then that keeps coming back.
Yeah.
This offense has a 75-yard drive like that. Like, okay, like maybe it gives you that hope, but we need to see more consistency. My golf game's not getting any better anytime soon. We'll see if this offense gets better. So,
I do have more faith in CU's offense to get better than your golf game.
because you've seen me golf, I completely agree with you there. This offense is going to get better before my golf game ever does. So let's get into predictions here. Let's wrap it up with predictions. Last week we went with the family pets, and Twigs picked ASU. He was right on, the bearded dragon, and Punchy's done.
Punchy's fired.
Yeah.
I gave her a lecture and she just looked the other way. She knew.
Well, so we're back to making our own predictions this week. Let's go with it. Go ahead.
Yeah, just with Colorado's defense is still playing pretty solid football. Jaden Daniels is pretty good, and he's going to make a lot of defenses look bad at times.
Yeah.
And I think you can make a case Arizona State is the best team in the Pac-12 South right now.
Yep.
So I think the frustration of what happened in Tempe was just kind of compounded because of the 30-0 results the week before against Minnesota, which is just natural. So Arizona State scores some points. I still think CU's defense is pretty solid. I think they're going to be good going forward. So I think it's going to be a relatively low-scoring game. And, I don't know if this is viewed as optimistic or pessimistic, but until CU's offense shows me a little bit more, I'm gonna cap them at 13 points for this week.
Okay.
And I like Drake London's gonna make some plays out there. Keaton Slovis is gonna make some plays through the air, but I don't think it's gonna get out of hand for Colorado in terms of their defense going against that offense. So give me 28 with USC. I say CU keeps them under 30, but they still lose the game by 15 points. So 28-13.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go with the optimistic route this week, and just to be a little bit different. I mean, there's really not a ton of reason to sit there and think Colorado's going to rise up and win this game, but I don't have a lot of faith in USC either. And we talk about, are they going to lay an egg twice in a row? I think they will. I think that's a team that is struggling right now. Obviously CU is as well, but I'm actually going to pick the Buffs to win this game. And I know you might laugh at me, some fans might laugh at me, but hey, I think the Buffs. I think there's some talent here. I think this defense is good. I think that the offense can do some things to get it going a little bit. I don't think they're going to score a ton of points. I think it's going to be low scoring. But I'm going to go 24-20, and the Buffs win this one.
Okay. Can I consult Twigs for a second opinion here?
I'll see if I can get a video.
All joking aside, it's not out of the realm of possibility, which, a lot of fans out there are going to criticize you for that pick. But, yeah. I mean, you're at home. USC is reeling, like we talked about. It really comes down to early in the game. This offense, they got to get some momentum because Carl Durrell can say that Brendan Lewis's morale is still up and his confidence is still up, but I've seen his body language late in some of these games, and it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
So to be able to get a little bit of that momentum and not have to wait until the first drive of the second half is going to be key. They're going to have to move the ball a little bit early on in this game, and if they do that, it really is not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think the offense will score all 24 points. I mean, I think the defense is going to have to chip in to win this game.
Yeah.
But I will say, Dimitri Stanley, I talked to him this week, and he did tell me, I asked him, you got a game here with two struggling teams, and he said, I think this game is really going to be more mental than physical. And he's probably right, and I asked him about a fast start, and he said that's always a key, but it's probably more key in a game like this. And, I agree with him. I think that whichever team maybe gets off to the faster start can kind of mentally bury the other team. And so we'll see which team does that.
Credit to Dimitri Stanley. He, I think, got 4 or 5 interview requests on Wednesday. And for a pass catcher in this offense right now, I mean, it's got to be, I don't even know if frustrating is the right word. It's got to be really tough on some of those guys. And, it's setting these guys up well, I think, when they go to job interviews in the future, dealing with us media folks when the offense is really struggling.
Yeah.
It's going to help those guys out. So credit to those guys that still, come and meet with the media every week. And Dimitri's been one of those guys that's been asked to do that a lot early on this season.
Yeah, he has. And so credit to him, credit to all these guys. Credit to Chev for stepping up and talking to us this week as well. I mean, that's not an easy spot for an offensive coordinator either. But we'll be back after the game and break down what happened against the Trojans.